After 31 hours and 4 days of work, heavily with Claude Code vibe coded, my team is now using the new app I just released. If your developer takes months to build an app like this, something is broken. I will show you what's possible now with the new AI tools and how you can expect the developer to work. Also, I'm going to tell you why it was so fast and the one thing that made the big difference. In my company, we all set our own goals and then we try to fulfill them by Friday 12 p.m. The benefits are that people find more autonomy in what they work and also work more focused on the thing they said they wanted to do. But we never had a tool for this. What we used was our messenger. It's something like Slack. It's called mattermost.com, and we just posted the goals in our channels, and then my assistant would go in and ask them if they actually reached the goal. And then she would put the results into a spreadsheet. And that's how we would track if someone reached their goals, and we can also have the overview over a full year. It's actually pretty cool to have this data, I noticed, as a business owner. This is the overview of my coding activity over the last 10 days. So all in total was 4 work days. And in this video, I'm also going to show you how I ideate with the AI and also the tricks that I use to make it happen so fast. And in the end of the video, I'll also give you a free download that you can use in order to set up your next app very fast as well. The basic idea of this app is that you just log in on a Monday, you set your goal, and then you write tasks to the goal. And as you're taking off these tasks, you see it on a timeline. So that means you can see when you achieved what task for each goal. And also the team members can see if you ticked something off. So it's a bit of a multiplayer feeling here. There's also a small time tracking aspect. So if I say I work for the last 5 hours and then I do a checkout, but I don't fully trust the system yet, so that's why I put this hour worked in here. It could also be that someone just checked in a bit later, so maybe they would just say, yes, that was 7 hours, and then they confirm and check out. And one important aspect as well is that we have all our company teams in here. Right now there is one, but you can have as many as you want. And when you go in, you can actually see what each team member worked on. So this is very important for our managers to see not just what's the project management tool when people work on tickets, but also what did they actually do. And one more thing that I wanted to implement is this checkout function. The checkout function usually right now for us works that we have a channel where on the end of each workday, every team member would go in and say, I did this and I did that. And now this is getting taken care of by the software. In the end of the day, you would just hit this button here. You would say, I'm going to check out now. Confirm and check out. Maybe you adjust the time, as I said. You confirm and check out, and then it's going to send a webhook. And the webhook now lands in our Mattermost, and it looks like this. So the other team members are automatically notified by when someone checks out, and they kind of have a better overview. So I think in the end, we might not even need this channel, but for now, I wanted to put it in just to be coherent with our current workflow. Also, it was very important for me to actually map our organizational structure into the app. That means that my managers can create their teams, and then they can also move people into the teams as they are currently actually working. And also one big thing was an impersonation feature. So right now here we have our organizations and we have the users in here. We probably need to blur this out, but I can impersonate the users so I can debug the software easier. Once this becomes a real SaaS, we probably need to take that away because I don't want to be able to randomly go into people's data and see what they did. But for now, for the debugging aspect, for me to debug my app, it's actually really helpful. Now, as you know what this app does, why did I code this so fast? And this is a good moment to subscribe to my channel to see more content like this. Also, it is free for you and it helps me a lot. The complexity trap. I'm in a coding group where I meet a lot of founders all the time. And what I notice is that everybody talks about the coolest new things, MCP servers and skills and all the new models. And what I noticed that a lot of people overcomplicate that. Very few people actually ship working software. And this is why I wanted to stick to the basics here. Usually when you start working with any kind of technology, you start out very simple. You don't have anything complex, or you don't have any big ideas and features. You just try to work with the software. And then as the time passes, you explore new things. So there's a new model, there's an MCP, there's a new IDE, there is anything that's like could bring you potential huge gains. And you basically go into up the complexity. At one point you notice all this complexity, all this tooling is actually taking away my productivity. And then you go back down and basically end up here. So as you become more versed in the technology, as time passes, as you get better with that, you're actually sticking more to the simple things. This is a normal curve that happens all the time when you learn a technology. And this person really put it well together. Just talk to it. So in the end, what I just do with Claude Code is I feed some context and then I talk to it and I tell it something like, the goal here is red, make it more strawberry. And it would do that. I could say, move these buttons down here. And I wouldn't have any kind of agent that says, I'm the front-end agent or something. I just type in what I want, and usually Claude Code takes care of that. A different explanation is the 80-20 rule. If this is all the things we could potentially do, like install MCP server and put something fancy in there, or play around with 5 more models, or install 10 new commands, that is all effort here that might just result in 20% of the gains. What is the stuff that actually moves the needle? There is, of course, the starter template. So what's the coding point you're starting off from? And we're going to talk about this later when I'm giving you the freebie to download. What I wanted to figure out is how can we have a setup that's actually quite simple, but gives us the most bang for the buck. These 20% here resulting in 80% of all the gains and the speed of coding. The setup that actually works. Right now it's around Christmas 2025, and I had some time and I just wanted to figure out this app because I knew I could give some performance gains to my team. And I thought, how about I just approach it from a point where I would just point it to my old repository and move all the important stuff over. And that's actually the unfair advantage I'm going to talk about in the next section. What actually works is a simple repository that has all the normal features that you would need from a SaaS. And I mean things like authentication, of course, multi-tenancy, admin panel, and a full frontend, and also a landing page that I showed you already. And then one of the most important things is we need a good CLAUDE.md. And I'm going to show you this right now. For me, a good CLAUDE.md is actually quite simple. Right now, it's around 62 lines, and it could be more. We could go up to, I would say, 500 lines without any problems, because this is going to be used all the time for every prompt we are sending into Claude Code. But what's important for me is that here we reference the docs folder, and the docs folder is where all the magic happens. Here we see we have all these sub things that we don't need all the time, but need sometimes. For example, front end. We have a couple of things that are important. For example, our 10-stack router. We have colors. We have the helpers that we're using all the time. When the AI works on front end, it doesn't necessarily need all the backend things like the database model. But for sure what it needs is the UI spec. So here we have all the definitions of the colors. And this actually helped me a lot staying true to the design that we have currently. What also helped me was to throw in some UI mockups. And now these are things that I made with the Google AI Studio, because Google AI Studio is just faster to code in the beginning. This is how it looks like. So in the Google AI Studio, you basically ideate and you go through very fast iterations without needing to code any backend. And this is a non-functional prototype. It does certain things, but it doesn't have a database. I might be able to put it in, but this is not the point. The point here is that we can iterate on the design very fast without burning so much context. Imagine doing all this work when there's already a database. This would slow us down quite fast. This is the one tool that I recommend to any also non-technical people to really master, because it gives you the ability to make software without needing a developer. And once you have the proof of concept, once you have your UI or how the app should look like, you give it to the developer and they're going to be much faster. Okay, so I threw in all these things from my UI prototype. And then in Claude Code, I would just point to the screenshot and say, look at the screenshot and build me that feature. So this here, for example, this is how it looked before. And it worked really well. It came out almost perfectly. One last thing I want to say about Google AI Studio. You see it here. I have the database model as well. So after making the UI prototype, I would go back and forth to talk about the database model. And once I had it, I actually put it as a mermaid diagram into my docs folder. So here, this is a mermaid diagram, and this is really good to reason about it. Let me just open it. So there are 2 ways to do it. This is a bit more complicated, and I actually like to keep it simple and use only the ones without the attributes. So in here, now we can reason about the database model, and it actually really helps us. So if this is too technical, I understand you, but it's actually important, even for non-tech people, to learn the database model. The reason is that the database model defines your destiny. This is a good blog post about this. The database model defines a lot what you can do later on with the app. The things you can do with the software is very dependent on the database. The database kind of defines what's possible later on. And if you get that wrong, you're stuck in a certain way. And that's why it's very important also for the non-tech people to know at least the database design and some basics about programming. There is one fancy feature of Claude Code that I wanted to mention, which is commands. Commands are actually really helpful. I have these commands that are in here, Claude commands. This is feature and validate. Feature means I would tell it to code this feature, for example, AI control. I would say feature AI control, and then it would make that feature, go through it in a couple of minutes or hours to code it out. And then it would put it here as a completed feature into the feature specs. And then we would know what was completed. I can review it. And once it's done, we actually keep the feature presentation in our Markdown file. So we can reference that later on if you ever need to write more tests. So if you're thinking about why is it built like that, we can go back and see what actually happened. I know this is already in the Git repository, but it actually makes sense to also have in here in a more natural language. So currently these are the most important slash commands I use. And validate, I sometimes use it directly, but it's also put into the CLAUDE.md that after every feature, it actually runs pnpm validate. So pnpm validate is just a very small script. I can show you real quick. It runs all the important things like linting. Is the code clean? It runs types checks, and it also runs tests. And here, if I run this now in the Claude Code, it would actually see that there's an unexpected any. So there will always be some iterations where Claude Code would improve the code. And also, if Claude Code ever screws up, it can improve itself quite fast. The unfair advantage. Now, there's one thing that I haven't told you up until now, and this is the reason why I was actually able to do this so fast. The reason is this. I started with an existing app. I already had coded this and it looks very similar. And I basically told it, go to this directory, pull everything out that's not business logic, and add this kind of functionality for the weekly planner for this. So what it did, it was basically copying out everything that we had before. So I didn't need to tell it the login needs to look in a certain way, this sign up needs to look in a certain way, or we have certain helpers for things. This was the one thing that supercharged my development speed because I had done so much already. So if you have a template to start off with, and there are a lot of templates you can purchase online, it was easier for me to reference an old project because I was already familiar with the code. So there was no point of actually purchasing a starter template or something. And now my current stack that I use here, I wanted to give this to you if you have a developer and he needs to start faster. If you are a coder yourself, that's also fine. You can go to this gist here on my GitHub and you can download the mega prompt. So basically what I did, I asked the AI, I want to bootstrap this very app, but no business logic. Could you pull out all this into a mega prompt and a plan and make me a holistic markdown file? And this is what's in here. You can go in here and copy this whole thing out and put it into your Claude Code in a new folder and say, I want to code, let's say, a weekly planner. Take this as a basis and build an app just like that. And it will come out very similar to what I have here. And of course, I would hope that you would change the colors a bit because I don't think my design is necessarily pretty, but it will for sure shorten your time in coding it. And of course, this is totally free. You just go on GitHub and download it for yourself. So the hard part in building this actually wasn't the code. The hard part was figuring out what I actually wanted. Yes, there were some things where the time zone broke some things or permissions had some gaps or I needed to fill in some more tests that I didn't have before. But all in all, it was just me telling the app where things should be arranged. So for example, it was not exactly clear where do we put the teams. So right now, our navigation is, this is the dashboard, this is the company with all the teams, and here are the teams. I wanted to do this because if I'm in two teams, I won't have direct access to the teams in the main navbar. And when I'm in a team, I want to see what's my work and what's my team. And then what's the day view and what's the week view. The information hierarchy was something that I couldn't have done just on a blank piece of paper because as I worked with the data, as I worked with the app, my picture of what I wanted to code there actually changed. And this is why this probably took half of the time of arranging things around and giving it smaller UI touches. For example, something like this, where the tasks that we ticked off are actually in one box, and to fold it if there are too many tasks. And also coloring, something like this is a goal, so it's golden, and this is a task that's in the misc section. This is not golden, this is a bit less golden. There's like some brownish. Splitting the tasks up into a main goal and a misc task was something I had to figure out as I worked with the app. And right now it makes a lot of sense, but it wasn't obvious when I started. Conclusion of this video. UX is actually still important and still hard. And you can only get the UX right if you're iterating and if you are constantly getting some feedback of what you did already. This is also why I think that UX designers have to work with AI, because just having a static thing on Figma or something won't cut it in the future. If your current software project is behind schedule, how about you book a call with me and we can see how we can get your developers back up to speed.